John Noe unveils Greater Than We Believe with your host, Stephen King.
Well, hello again. My name is Stephen King, and this is my friend John Noe. We are here to welcome you to the next session of Greater Than We Believe. It's a Bible teaching series that John and I have been putting on now for over 2 years. We have had, actually last week was video number 115, so today is video number 116. Now, I haven't missed a deadline yet, so God's really blessed us in that way. We had finished a series with Sunday at Elijah and his books, and we were getting ready to start a new series. I know there's subject matter here, and John decided to kind of break loose and let's talk about some things that are going on right now that you would find fascinating. And last week, he actually introduced us and showed us this book that he had just gotten in the mail. And in case you can't read that, it says AD 70, the movie. And at the bottom, it says John Noe, PhD. John, if you haven't seen last week's video, you need to watch that. John talked to us about the journey now that started 20 years ago this month, where he was invited to Hollywood and got involved in a project here that's just fascinating. And so today's video number 116, we're going to call it AD 70 the movie, Pitching in Hollywood. And if you're familiar with the way Hollywood and Christianity, they don't seem to mesh too much sometimes, so I can imagine the hurdles that you went through at the time. And so we're going to turn it over to John now and ask you just to continue the story you started last week.
Well, in Hollywood...
Yay!
I got a cup.
Yeah.
In Hollywood, they have a saying. In Sid Field's book, Selling a Screenplay, he talks about it. He says, timing is everything in Hollywood. And back then, 2002... it was the best of times for Ted Baehr and myself, who I introduced in the last video. If you haven't seen it, you need to see the last video. USA Today, in fact, in 2002, December 1st, on a front page story, reported that Hollywood goes to epic proportions. 14 historical epics are in production. And what Ted and I were working on was a historical epic.
Yes.
In fact, Ted calls it the greatest story never told about the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple and during the Roman-Jewish wars of 66 through 70 A.D. And they said, 14 historical epics in development or planned for release over the next 2 years. The modern epic requires a cast of thousands and a budget topping $100 million. Since Gladiator triumphed in the public arena in 2000 and generated a box office worldwide of $457 million and a raft of Oscars, and it was voted the best picture of the year, our timing was perfect. But it got gooder.
Gooder.
Yes. These epics being developed also followed on the successful heels of Mel Gibson's Braveheart.
Yes.
1995.
Yes.
And then came along, unfortunately, the movie Troy, 2004, which flopped.
Yes.
And Alexander, 2004, which also flopped, which hurt us in that regard. But then Ted and I were, back then, right at that time, Ted and I were working on the script. Where did I put the script? There it is. The script. We were working on this.
Yes.
This is a 12th draft.
Yes.
We were working on 1 and 2, 3 and 4 draft, which I'll get into a little bit. and which I do get into in the book about how that transpired. And then in 2004, Mel Gibson's bombastic biblical epic, The Passion of the Christ, literally shook Hollywood to its core.
Yes.
With its colossal box office success, the film grossed over $612 million worldwide. Became the 7th highest grossing film domestically at the end of its theatrical run, and still is the highest grossing Christmas film of all time.
Christian or Christmas?
Christian.
Yeah.
Christian film. Ironically, Stephen, all the major studios had refused to distribute it.
Yes.
Because they called it they called it Mel's Jesus picture.
Yeah.
And he was getting just ridiculed by Hollywood in the process of even making it. So he was forced to go around them. And he had his own production company, Icon Productions, make the movie, and an independent Newmarket Films distribute it. But following its box office bonanza, everyone in Hollywood was looking for the next Passion.
Yes.
And Ted and I had it. We had it. At that time, it was called The Coming. And we had a little card here talking about it, that The Coming is coming. we had the sequel, as you will see. So it was a sequel coming 40 years after. From a story standpoint, 40 years after Christ being crucified on the cross, which was what the Passion was all about, we had the destruction of Jerusalem. 40 years later, 60, 70 A.D. And, for instance, the president of Warner Brothers was quoted back then as saying this, said, "I wouldn't know how to duplicate this." Meaning Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ. But if a guy like Mel Gibson came in with a film that had a sociological and theological message, we had it. We had a religious message that was controversial. We had it. I wouldn't run from it. He said. Still, many back then recognized that the box office success of The Passion would not be easily replicated by simply making more Bible stories, for example. But Hollywood was now rethinking films of faith, and the thinking was that a wave of New Testament-themed movies or more religious films in general would now follow. And we had it, and the timing was perfect. And there we were, ready to go. And the genre of our film, again, back in the original development process, was called The Coming, was a high-concept, action-adventure, historical, biblical epic based on a true story. And high concept, Stephen, is the most important phrase in Hollywood. It means that it must be captured in one or two sentences, and that it would immediately intrigue the reader and seem unique, fresh, and exciting. And this sentence is also called a log line, which is a summary of the story that's going to be given. And it's got to be clearer and more compelling than it's got to be clear and compelling. And the more clear and the more compelling, the better your chances are that you get your script read. Also, high concepts are the requirements for a high concept, according to Hollywood, in the books I was reading, was number one, an original and unique premise that hadn't been seen before, in movie form, and in the way you're presenting it. 2, has to have mass audience and commercial appeal. And 3, is a story that is specific in your log line that you put into it, or the summary of your story. And the potential is obvious. So high concept, according to the Screenwriter's Survival Guide, is a story so novel and the concept alone will lure audiences into the movie theater. So you ready for our log line?
Yes.
Here it is, which we posted on our various things. Here's an updated one, 8070 Warriors of the Last Temple, which is another one of our titles for the film. In the generation following Jesus' death, a Jewish priest and army general is captured in battle, becomes an advisor to the Romans, and struggles with a decision that will impact the ultimate fate of Jerusalem, the Second Temple, and all the teachings of Jesus.
Compelling.
Think that might have compelling?
For me, it would.
Well, again, as I mentioned, our first title, working title, was just Josephus, because that was my protagonist.
Sure.
Now I knew what a protagonist was, so I use it a lot.
Yeah.
So to act like I know what my protagonist is. No. We called it Josephus, A Tale of the Christ.
Okay.
How's that? Next, we switched to the coming, and then as we evolved, AD 70, Warriors of the Last Temple, and then just AD 70, and then our last one was Traitor Warrior, The Days of Vengeance. So that evolved. So you want to hear our little pitch?
Yes.
All right. This is my elevator pitch. Now, an elevator pitch is one you got to do in two minutes.
Yeah.
As the elevator, that's all the time you got. One event cuts across every culture and nation. Traitor Warrior, Days of Vengeance, marketing. Here it goes. In 2004, since 2004, Hollywood has been looking for the next blockbusting The Passion of the Christ or Gladiator, something with comparable domestic and international appeal and box office potential. Yet something with substance and freshness that will make some kind of noise. Consider this. And then I gave my log line, which I just read you. And then the genre, high concept, action, adventure, historical, biblical, epic based on a true story. Framing, the traitor warrior is the Passion of the Christ meets Braveheart with a gladiator twist. How do you like that?
You dropped all the right names.
Let me say that. Traitor Warrior is the Passion of the Christ meets Braveheart with a gladiator twist. Endorsement. It's the greatest story never told. Ted Baehr, Movieguide magazine.
I like that.
How's that? Now you want to hear my 5-minute pitch?
Yep.
Now this is the one that I would present later, and I talk about this in the second half of the book.
Okay.
This is one that I would present live in pitch fests, to agents and studios and so forth. And I had to have it memorized and had to rehearse it, and so forth, because I couldn't read it.
Right.
Now I haven't rehearsed it and memorized it now because that was back.
Too long,
It had been too long, so I'm going to have to do it. But here's how it would go. And you had to come across as confident and smooth and succinct because you had to get your foot in the door.
Sure.
And you only had 10 minutes at best to do that, and then shuffle you off. And well, that's another story. Tell that in the book, but I'm not going to tell that here. And you also had to be prepared for interruptions because they would interrupt you and try to get you to, flustered or something like that. Anyway, so I would say this. I'd announce the title of it, like 8070 Warriors of the Last Temple or Traitor Warrior Days of Vengeance, whichever one I was using. And then I would say, and Ted Baehr, publisher of Movieguide magazine, calls it the greatest story never told. The genre it's a high-concept action-adventure historical biblical epic. It's based on a true story. Now, let me give you a little bit of the background. Ted Baehr, publisher of Movieguide magazine. You ever heard of Ted? Or Movieguide? Yes or no? In L.A., approached me a few years ago stating that, John, there's never been a big screen Hollywood movie made about the time frame of your PhD dissertation and the books that you've written, and you have to be the one to write it so that we can get your POV. And I said, well, let me hear the log line. I said, okay, so let me give you the log line one more time. So then I tell them the log line. The log line is, in the generation following Jesus' death, a Jewish priest and army general is captured in battle, becomes an advisor to the Romans, and struggles with a decision that will impact the ultimate fate of Jerusalem, the Second Temple, and all of Jesus' teachings. Wow. So you ready for the synopsis? Here we go. In the generation following Jesus' death, when?
In the generation.
Post the Passion.
Yeah, it's post-death, right.
Yeah. In the generation following Jesus' death, and in the shadow of his most dramatic and dreadful prophecy, the destruction of Jerusalem and the Second Temple, a young, ambitious, but pacifist Jewish priest and gifted scribe is advancing in the temple hierarchy. But he is forced out of the temple service and into the Jewish army. In other words, he got drafted.
Yeah.
That happened to me almost.
Oh.
Yeah. Vietnam, but that's another issue.
Yeah.
He becomes a general. I became a private. Actually, I started lower than that. He became a general in charge of the Galilean district and charged with stopping the Roman invasion from reaching Jerusalem. But he's defeated and captured in battle, and through some miraculous but true circumstances becomes the advisor, mediator, and historian for the Romans. During the final siege of Jerusalem, he tries to convince his people to surrender and the Romans to not destroy his city and the temple. And throughout this time, he struggles with a decision that will impact the ultimate fate not only of Jerusalem and the Second Temple, but also the future of the teachings of Jerusalem, of Jesus. Josephus, my protagonist, is a real historical person who actually lived through these events and played a critical and highly controversial role. His historic writings are the only eyewitness accounts. By the way, these are the writings of Josephus.
Yes.
The only eyewitness accounts that we have, historical accounts that we have of this time period. Works of Josephus.
Yeah.
Of this most significant period of time. The texture of this time is the clashing of three huge cataclysmic forces and belief systems. Number one, the paganism of Rome. Number two, the end of biblical Judaism, which is with its animal sacrifice blood temple system. And number three, the emergence of a new faith called Christianity out from under being a sect of Judaism and free to become its own worldwide religion. In the end, and despite all his efforts, Jerusalem and the temple are destroyed. And Josephus loses everything he held dear. But through another miraculous and true twist of faith, he gains everything he ever wanted, marries the spurned love of his life, and writes for all posterity works considered by many as a companion book for the Bible. Works of Josephus. In Hollywood framing parlance, Traitor Warrior is the Passion of the Christ meets Braveheart with a gladiator twist. Would you like to see the script?
Yes.
That's a pitch. That's a 5-minute pitch. That's what I'd have to do. I did that
Well, I would say a bunch
hundreds of times. So endorsements. Want to hear a few of the endorsements we got from some
Absolutely.
other people besides Ted? And we had Ted, which I talked to you about. He says, he said it's the right project at the right time. It's a good script that needs to be produced. It's the greatest story never told. Ted Baehr, publisher of Movieguide magazine. Victoria Wisdom, partner and agent of one of the agencies there in Hollywood, said the number one trend, and this was in 2004, the number one trend in Hollywood is the Passion of the Christ. Studio executives are saying to their staffs, any religious epics in development, get one. Or get some. Donnie Nelson, one of my script and marketing consultants, said this is a professionally written screenplay about a period in history which has been largely overlooked by filmmakers. With the success of Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ, there continues to be interest in biblical themes by a variety of Hollywood producers. This project, meaning 80-70 the movie, not the book, but
Yeah.
the screenplay, this
Yes.
thing right here, this project could really satisfy the public's desire for big screen entertainment and fulfill the writer's desire to educate the public about the history of Christianity. Is that a nice endorsement?
Yes, very much so.
Another one of my consultants, script consultants, Dr. Linda Sager, said this is one of the most important and dramatic times in history, revolving around a strong protagonist who was at the center. John Noe has captured the action and conflict in this script and added the rich texture of this period, which he knows well. It is certainly worthy of consideration from any producer or director who is fascinated with the action and conflict of this period. And one more, I'll give you one more. Devorah Cutler Rubenstein, Jewish. And also one of my script consultants and marketing consultants. I love this screenplay. Can't wait to see it on the screen. Did I mention she's Jewish?
Yeah.
The story is epic, teeming with action, but at its core is a character torn inside and out by the forces at work in his life. John has done a masterful job putting us in the times. involving us deeply in Josephus's divided loyalties to his Jewish brethren, his Roman allies, and his recently converted to Christianity girlfriend. While I am Jewish, I find myself fascinated by a story about the times when Christianity was just unfolding, where the conflict between Christians and Romans plays a major role. So I believe, as a producer and former studio executive, that this screenplay has fantastic worldwide appeal, in my opinion, as both a human story and as an action adventure.
Wow.
Isn't that nice?
That's quite an endorsement.
And we had the pocket cards, which I showed you, because as one of my
Under the script?
no, I can't find. Don't know what I did with that. How to Make It in Hollywood said, Hollywood is a talking town, not a reading town. Everyone in Hollywood needs a card. Well, these were our cards.
Okay.
You know, better than a little bitty thing. You know,
Sure.
it had the title of whatever title we were using, and Ted's statement on here, and then a little bit about it, you know, on the back there. And I handed out tons of these things all over the place. And all that is told, you know, I'm not going to get involved in that here, but it's in the book. So we had those. Let me skip ahead. And Ted had the connections, you know, as we talked about in our last.
Yes.
So he had what's more important than all this, the times, you know, right after the Passion of the Christ, and people are looking for the next Passion. Ted had personal connections with the head of Mel Gibson's production company. And so he pitched The Coming to him as being the story sequel and uniquely positioned to capitalize on the success of Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ. And the head of Mel Gibson's production company asked to see the script. So Ted sent it to him. And we were waiting with bated breath.
Absolutely.
About a week later, he got a short message from him. It said, "We're going to pass on The Coming." And Ted asked him, why? He said, because Mel does not want to become known as a producer of Christian films. Welcome to Hollywood.
Yeah.
The only town in the world where you can die from encouragement. Dorothy Parker. I'm quoting that.
Okay, I was going to say, that's a pretty interesting quote. Die from
The
encouragement.
only town in the world where you can die from encouragement.
Wow.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and not do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a letdown. Major letdown. Major disappointment. It hurt. I mean, we thought we were... But Ted had other connections that would be capable of producing this big screen action adventure historical epic. So we pitched the Coming to them, and again as being the sequel of The Passion of the Christ. And in the trade out there, when somebody established in the industry knows influential gatekeepers who will read your work, and he or she is willing to make the contact on your behalf, you know what they call that? Godfathering.
Godfathering, okay.
Godfathering. Another saying in Hollywood is concept is king. And the first half of the battle is having a great concept.
Yes.
We had it.
Yes.
We had a great concept. And we had a great script. At least that's what my endorsers were saying.
Yeah.
You know, that's not what I'm saying. I had to do 12 of them.
Yeah.
And I thought the first one was great. You know, after the 12th, you realize your first one wasn't so great. Nor the third or fourth. But anyway. But it takes more than that. The second half is getting the right people at the high level, at a high enough level, with major producers or studios to read your script. And the higher the level of the person you go in at, that level, the better. Especially when you're pitching a big screen, big budget Hollywood movie. And you know what the budget was for this movie?
I'm sure it was a lot of money, but I wouldn't have a clue.
Well, I talk about that in the book.
Okay.
I'm not going to talk about it here, but I'll tell you what it was.
It was a bunch, huh?
126 million.
Wow.
And
that was back in
That was 06.
06.
When we
okay.
had the budget run.
Yeah.
Cost me $6,000 to have a budget run. 126 million. It's a big, and you got to have it run by somebody who's recognized in the industry
Yes.
as legitimate.
Yes.
You just can't have Joe Blow say, well, Joe Blow said it would cost about, no, can't do that.
Excuse me.
Okay. Thus, in 2004, 2005, and 2006, we were well positioned and the timing was tremendous, or so we thought. So Ted suggested, let me see how the people I'm approaching go first, and then we can go to the agents and others if we need to do that. And since I had no industry contacts whatsoever, I mean, zippo, or any clout whatsoever, I was relying solely on Ted, and his contacts were Hallmark, Faith and Values Media, Walden Media, the producers of Chronicles of Narnia, Lion, Witch and the Wardrobe, that kind of stuff. Very high grossing, almost 300 million it did. Fortitude Films and 2 producer friends. So I'm going to stop here. That's all I'm going to tell you. Much more is in the book. Here, you want to promote the book for me?
Oh, yeah.
So I don't look like I'm doing this. For
What he said. I love that.
a lot more in there.
Oh, wow.
And next week we're going to introduce a new series.
Next week. Okay. Well,
That's it for the book.
okay. This is cool. So, man, I'm excited. You know what? I just literally just saw it, and I just noticed you got a new picture on the back of that book, too.
I know. I had this photographer
That's
come
pretty
in to do
cool,
those,
huh?
and
Yeah.
we had to decide which one was the least worst.
The least offensive picture we could
The
take.
least worst one. We picked the least worst one. Yeah.
I love the colors and the drama and everything. The cover art is beautiful on this, and I like that. That's man. Somebody said that. Well, I want to see that movie. You know,
You see how the color changed?
Yeah.
I don't know why that.
I'm not sure if it was just,
You see how that? I don't know why that works like that.
but anyway, this is really cool. Well, folks, I'm getting my copy. I'm hoping you're going to get your copy. But there was a lot of things you were saying that I wanted to say something about, and I decided to just let you talk, and I forgot most of them. I'm good about writing notes sometimes. This time I was just so caught up in what you were saying, I didn't even write any notes. But
Well, when you read the book, you can write your notes.
oh
on
yeah,
the side
yeah,
of the book.
yeah,
Big margins there.
yeah. So next week we start a new series. Once
New
again,
series.
you're not going to tell me nothing until next week. So it's a
Well,
surprise.
I don't know what it is yet.
Oh, okay.
No, I know what it is. I was
So today's video is number 116, and we called it the pitching in Hollywood. And number 117 next week will be where to next.
yeah, that's a good title. Don't you
I
think?
like that.
Where
yeah,
to next?
I'm lost. Can where we go? Okay. Well, that was very interesting. I enjoyed that. It was kind of nice to take a little bit of a break doctrinally and just kind of but honestly, I cannot believe how many people. I mean, kids grow up in church and hear Bible stories, and you mention Noah with his ark, or you mention Moses raising his thing and the waves, you know, the Red Sea parting, and you mention certain Bible stories. And if a person was raised in a Christian home, a lot of times that's familiar. They may not know the whole story, but they're relatively familiar. But it amazes me how many Christians out there, good, faithful people. You talk about AD 70, so what's AD 70? You know, when Jerusalem was destroyed. Oh, okay. And they're clueless. And they have no idea how important a point that was in human history and in biblical history and in our faith. So,
And Christians have no idea of the dynamics that went on.
yes.
And that's what the movie
yes.
focuses on. Because when you write a movie, it's not just a documentary.
Yes.
You got to make it dramatic.
Yes.
It's the people that have major stuff to lose,
Yes.
major stuff to gain.
Yes. Well, that's going to be a great read. I'm going to enjoy that. And I'm looking forward to next week to see what our next series is going to be about. Folks, we love you. We want to encourage you. We hope that, and I keep saying we, I know I'm speaking for John, but I know he can speak for himself. But our whole focus is to promote Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, to help people to understand that He is greater than we could ever fathom. When we say greater than we believe, there's so much about, well, it's been said, all the books that have ever been written couldn't contain all the works that Jesus did and all the things he said. I mean, he's just above us. So we'll never quit learning about him. We'll never quit learning about truth. Even John, and I appreciate your saying this. I don't know if you even aware that you said it. You were mentioning the one, this is the upgraded book of the other one. You admitted that in that other book you had some things in there that you don't necessarily believe in now, and that you have corrected yourself and been willing to say, okay, that I've got a better understanding now, and you've corrected it in this book. We're all fallible, folks, and if John finds somewhere along the line that something he's held to for a while scripturally maybe missed the mark, and God reveals it to him, and he really sees a need to change, well, then it may be embarrassing. You know, somebody may say, well, see, you weren't right then, so why should I think you're right now? But, you know, that's just childish. But I appreciate your humility and willing to stand before God and before people and say, well, this is what I understand, and this is why. And one of the things I appreciate about John's books, if you have not read them, he shows you a lot of facts, a lot of things, a lot of stuff that you can check it. I mean, it's all verifiable. But generally, as a whole, in the rule, very rarely does John say at the end of the book, so here's what I believe, and you should believe it too. John's approach is, these are the things that we've found. This is, he might even say, here's how I believe this and why. But you're on your own. You make your decision. We've given you the pros and the cons and the tools to work with. You pray about it. You make a decision. And you rarely see someone do that. Most religious leaders, they'll have their opinion, and you better agree with them, or you're anathema.
Here's where we're right and everybody else is wrong.
Everybody else is wrong. Yeah. John, thank you so much. God bless all of you. Continue to pray for our ministry if you would. I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. And
a new series.
A new series. We'll see you then. Thank you. Good night. All right.